I originally wrote this letter, at least the bones of it, a couple of weeks ago. And while many of the things still have relevance, some of them have become outdated. So instead of following this exactly, I'm mostly going to speak from the heart. This is an open letter to Vladimir Putin from me. I'm not purporting to stand for anyone else but myself and how I view the world and how I view what's going on with Russia and Ukraine right now. Mr. Putin, you don't know me, you don't know who I am, um, but I want to tell you what I feel. And some of it's going to be about Russia, some of it's going to be about politics, some of it's going to be about humanity as a whole. And I want you to know that this is from the heart. For a little bit of context, we're talking about we're at the point in the Ukraine war, special military operation, as you call it, where by and large the front lines have stagnated a little bit, but the Ukrainians clearly have the upper hand. We're shortly before winter, and things are getting pretty rough out there. Not for everybody, but particularly for the recently mobilized young men that you are pouring into the country, and they are facing what will be the greatest challenges of their lives right now, today, in the mud and trenches of Ukraine. The Kerch Bridge was bombed a couple of weeks ago. As of this point, I believe the Russians are still saying it was a truck bomb, and that certainly seems to be the correct information. But I don't know that there's any information as to who actually arranged that bomb or anything. Needless to say, the Kerch Bridge is still at very low traffic levels, with both the rail lines basically inoperative. One side of the bridge destroyed, and the other at individual vehicles passing across it at a low rate. The mobilization has resulted in hundreds of thousands. The number I had at that time was 700,000 military age young men leaving the country. They are evading being called up and sent into battle. That's the future of your country right there. It's running away, and you are losing your future. My thoughts on Russia: understand that I grew up at the tail end of the Cold War. You experienced the whole thing yourself, but I got the tail end. I saw on television as the Berlin Wall fell. I saw the fall of the Soviet Union and the rise of the Russian Federation. For many years, the Russians were the enemy. They were the ones that were on the wrong side of history. And yet, for many years, I had let that go, and I no longer thought of Russia as the enemy, because Russia is not the enemy. The Russian people are not the enemy. They're wonderful people, tremendously skilled, tremendously capable people, intelligent, long-suffering, wonderful people in Russia. And the fact is that your entire population is around 140 million people in a country that spans, I believe it's 11 time zones from what I recall. It's enormous. Your natural resources are tremendous. You have tremendous mental assets through the younger generation that are gaining an education, that are pursuing knowledge of higher order and higher technology in the modern era. You don't have to like the governments of other nations or how they do things to understand that knowledge is the true power in this age. And as you do, as your youth do, they will build a greater Russia as they work. But you're losing that. I have no ill will to the people of Russia. I bought this some years ago. It's a familiar one to you, an M9130. This one was built in 1939. It could have served in World War II as the Russians fought against the Germans, but I don't believe it. I don't believe it did. It might have been issued, but I don't think it was used heavily because you can still see machining marks on the bolt here that have not been worn away. The stock doesn't have the typical trench look to it. It's been refurbished a few times, but it's still a good rifle. I understand that one of your soldiers in the last day or two, one of your soldiers' hand was blown off when the chamber of his Mosin Nagant exploded, which means you're issuing to your frontline troops bolt-action rifles designed in the late 1800s. And they're not being maintained. That's no way to treat someone who is fighting for you. So let's hit this right here on the head. What is the real problem that Russia has? And I'll tell you, it's a lot of the same problem that we have here in the United States. And that is corruption. As the incentive to do what's right has been removed, the incentive to do what gets you the most money is enhanced. So your oligarchs, your military advisors, your people who are looking to catch a buck are taking the money and they're providing substandard equipment, if they're providing anything at all. I believe it was 1.5 million winter uniforms never even arrived at your warehouses. They just were, the money disappeared. And my understanding is that again, this is what I understand. And what I hear is that you're actually issuing World War II padded uniforms out to your soldiers for the winter. So you have a haves and have-nots situation there, where some of your troops have modern, crack gear, and some of your people are suffering. In fact, a lot of them are on the front lines. They're carrying rusty AKs or M9130s from World War II and before. And they're not able to do what you ask them to because of corruption. Which brings me to your advisors. And the question I keep asking myself is, do your advisors really have your interests at heart? Or are they looking for that fast corruption buck? Because everything I'm seeing says that they're telling you wrong things. And that could be because they don't want to be dead. And they think that if they say the wrong thing to you, that you will start that process for them of introducing them back to God. Or they are so corrupt that they are making money based on what they can steal from the Russian people. So I'd be asking myself, if I were you, which of my advisors said that it would be a fast war going into Ukraine? Which of your advisors is currently saying that you can win in a speedy way with no problems at all? Which of your advisors are advising you in ways that are hurting your nation and destroying your future? And those advisors shouldn't be your advisors anymore. Your allies are another concern here. And let me tell you from my worldview real fast. I see China as the rising power right now. The U.S. is a great nation. I want there to be no question about that. It's a great nation, but it is suffering from corruption in much the same way. But China is watching this war in Ukraine, and they are laughing because they're watching two potential enemies on the world stage destroy each other. wreck their futures, empty their bank accounts and their coffers, destroy countless millions of dollars in military hardware, and they're spending nothing. Now, maybe you're saying to yourself, China's my ally. China expects you to be done with this whole thing in a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks at most. And China's not going to be looking at that and saying that is a successful nation right there. That's not to say that you need to go in there and start kicking butts and taking names in Ukraine. Quite the opposite. All that does is it means that you're dumping even more of your security, your military, your resources right down the trash can. And China is watching. Now, this is a scenario. This is the one that keeps me awake at night. Maybe it doesn't you because, you're in the middle of it. I'm not. But here's the scenario I see. One, you share an awful lot of border with China. Now, after you've spent a long time wasting and blowing your resources on trying to take Ukraine, and as the U.S. has done the same, especially if you go nuclear. Now, you just recently said that you are not talking about nuclear weapons, despite implying it for some time. But especially if you went nuclear. But let's say, in general, you go hard conventional warfare. And at some point in time, China can say, okay, world, we see what's going on, and we see that Russia is a problem for the world. We'll take care of him. We'll take care of Russia. We'll invade, we'll overthrow, and we take the entire nation of Russia, and the world doesn't have to lift a finger. China's got billions of people. They can put billions of soldiers in Moscow with human wave attacks that would make the Russian ones look meager by comparison. Timed well, they could start their assault in February and be sitting in Moscow by August. The winter doesn't help you then. China comes away the big winner because it shows itself as the sole superpower left on the planet as it topples you and as it suckers the U.S. in with greater debt and suckers the world into believing they're a partner. Now, maybe they are. I'm not saying they're not. But what keeps me awake at night is the idea that China is just waiting. They see all those resources and they got all these people. They can take advantage of all 11 of those time zones that you're not right now. So in summary, I'm looking at Russia's finest, their future generation. They're leaving or they're being killed. It'll take 40, 60 years to recover, if you can recover. And the loss of that future is bigger than anything else. People matter. People really do matter. Your people are much like the people around the world. Challenge your people to develop your natural resources, not just your gas, but there's so many other resources you can truly provide to the world. Russia could be a breadbasket for the entirety of the world right now, with modern technology combined with modern agriculture capabilities. Build your natural abilities to manufacture. Don't be reliant on China, on Taiwan, on the U.S., on the European Union. Find your own manufacturing capabilities, not just in tanks and planes and war, but microwaves and washing machines and consumer goods. Create a middle class once again. Manufacture more. Don't do what the U.S. has done, which is send all of our manufacturing overseas. That doesn't mean you can't have some of that, but you need to be building your own abilities inside your country. And that's everything. Tires, trucks, everything you need for a modern life. There ought to be some ability for you to make it. The U.S. would do well to listen to the same advice. Encourage learning and education of real topics, the science, the actual deep science, the technology, the engineering, the mathematics, the things that will create for Russia a future unparalleled. Develop a love for God, family, and country. I believe it was Moroni, rent his coat in the middle of warfare when his own people were suffering at the hands of enemies so wicked, and they were not lifting up their arms to support them. And he wrote on the back, in memory of our God, our religion and freedom, and our peace, our wives, and our children. And he carried it around. And they summoned the will to protect themselves. But these are people that were defending their homes, defending their families. The Ukrainians are defending their homes. The Ukrainians are defending their families. The Ukrainians are defending their lives. And they will not give up. And this is where I come to what I really want to say. Defend your own homes. Defend your own people. Make it so you have a future. And those young men who are carrying 100-year-old rifles don't have to die. Instead, they can live and make a brighter future. At least that's how it looks from my front porch. I hope that you've listened, or at least had somebody listen. Sincerely, me, Brian.